Hi, everyone, and welcome to Scale and Adapt, the podcast where we explore how innovative leaders stay resilient, adapt fast, and scale what works. I'm Kathryn Aimaq, founder and CEO of Scale Advisors AI, where we help organizations accelerate growth and build smarter operations through data-driven strategy and intelligent automation. In each episode of Scale and Adapt, we sit down with founders, executives, and changemakers who are navigating consistent transformation. From SaaS growth challenges to operational pivots, AI integrations, and culture shifts, our conversations go beyond headlines to unpack what it really takes to lead through change, stay agile, and build organizations that thrive in uncertain times. Today, I'm joined by Jerason Banes, CEO of Invergence, a modern open source web and API platform that challenges the very foundation of how teams build software. Their mission? They help developers build software faster than AI by stripping away unnecessary complexity and rethinking the tools we've come to depend on. Jerason, it's such a pleasure to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about you and what made you start Invergence.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my story really goes all the way back to 2007 when I first entered um, healthcare. I was working for a company at the time no one knew of, largest company no one ever heard of called Thomson. They were acquired by Reuters, so most people know Thomson Reuters Healthcare,
Mhm.
which then got spun off as Truven, which now no one knows again, even though they were acquired by IBM. So a big company, but it was one of those where not everyone knew who it was. But we had big problems to solve. At the time, I was just an engineer. It turned out that trying to improve healthcare was a very difficult challenge, and we ran into a complete lack of technology that could work for the problem. It turns out everything that was off the shelf was a solution that just ended up, well, ultimately failing, right?
Mhm.
So the industry was full and is still full of products that just don't work.
Right.
Um, and after a lot of, shall we say, nonstop crunch times where people were working extreme hours, one of my colleagues, I remember, actually filed a 120-hour time card for 1 week, which was
Wow.
insane.
Is that even possible?
Well, yes,
I
but
guess the answer is
there was a
yes.
lot of like falling asleep in his chair and then waking up and doing more, and
Wow.
the result was not good. We could see it in the
I can
results
only
of his work.
imagine.
But that was the results of, the technology wasn't there, and we were trying to build solutions to analyze healthcare and understand what was wrong in healthcare, and it just was falling apart. So ultimately had to go back to the drawing board, rethink everything we were doing, and came up with new technology. And that new technology did solve the problem. We actually released a tool called Care Discovery, which was very effective at helping hospitals improve their quality care. I remember there was one hospital, they were going to have to lay off a lot of staff and they didn't want to. So with the analytics that we provided, they were able to reduce their length of stay by, I think their goal was a day and a half, which is a very large change for those who understand healthcare. But
Mhm.
then they achieved like 2.75-day reduction and had a surplus of money. So not only did they not have to fire anyone, they actually were able to expand.
That's wonderful.
And the technology was surprising because I realized that if I could figure it out, the rest of the market should be able to figure it out. And it never happened. No one else figured it out. And so I went to a couple different companies trying to expand the technology and ran into management issues on top of that. Realized that, Agile's been deployed poorly in our industry. Ultimately realized I needed to build a company to change this wholesale, right? It couldn't just
Right.
be technology owned by one company. And it couldn't just be one company trying to change the industry and, get everyone to try and follow. It had to be, something fundamental that improved everyone. So right about the time I went into professional consulting to try and learn how to talk to executives, right? Before
Yeah.
I became one myself, COVID hit. And literally, I started in February of 2020 and COVID hit, a few weeks later. So it was like the worst time possible. But COVID had a lot of effects, one of them being that it blew up what the improvements that had been made in healthcare. Healthcare has my wife's a nurse and I hear from her every day about how the processes and procedures and everything have just gone sideways. And then when was finally able to, escape the mad rush for technology that COVID produced and found Invergence, I found that the technology industry was now undermined as well. So now I had multiple problems that had to be dealt with. We have, we needed better technology, but we have a lower quality of workers, for better or for worse, kind of overwhelming the industry. Healthcare is worse than ever, and we can't even attack that without the right technology. So, these problems are stacking. And then you get into the management problems where, on top of everything, Agile, which had a huge impact on our industry and improving things, was now misunderstood and badly deployed everywhere. And so that didn't work. So ultimately, Invergence, I founded on 3 pillars to try and change the industry. But there's the technology. So our platform is called Convergence there, and it rethinks how we build software to build it extremely fast. We get rid of a lot of things. Everyone thinks like ORMs, object relational mappers, for example, are fantastic tools, but my colleagues and I invented those back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and we thought it was a good idea, and then we proved it wasn't. And
I mean, it's
I could
technically
talk.
considered obsolete today, right?
It's not, though. There's no alternatives to ORMs on the market except for our Convergence platform.
Right.
That's the only thing that's not object-based. Even when you're using a non-object-oriented language, you'll find that they still use ORMs. So, Go has like GORM, which seems just silly. And then the second pillar is management. So we actually have a process we call Momentum, which is an enhancement to the Scrum process. And that provides a lot more prescriptive approach to improving team performance. Effectively, it's all about make a plan, right? Scrum does a very bad job of saying, okay, what is a plan? It doesn't really help you there. So we say, okay, you're going to lay everything out in a Gantt chart and figure out what it is that needs to be done. And that plan is going to go wrong, and that's okay. Let it go wrong, but you'll use that information to then adapt throughout the sprint and then have something in the retro you can talk about and improve next time. And so this is a techniques that I've used for decades now, and it's been tremendously effective. So we're trying to make impact there. And then the third pillar of the business is education. So with the challenges of so many young programmers, they don't really know how to code these days. They think they do because they've
Right.
done some tutorials, but you hear a lot of like, well, JavaScript is terrible because 0.1 plus 0.2 doesn't equal 0.3. And I go, yeah, that's how computers work,
Yeah.
right? Of course.
Yeah.
So I've been working with a professor out of Minnesota on or out of Montana. I'm sorry. He's the creator of HTMX, but we built a virtual computer called the MTMC, and then going to be working on additional educational articles and videos around that. And he's using that for his education so that there's a stable platform of a slow computer where students can better understand how the computer works. And so those 3 pillars, we're trying to move them all together and make a difference in the industry, raise all the boats, get the technology where it needs to be, and then we can attack other problems like if you're in healthcare, you need better technology. And if you'd like, I could go into the very long explanation of how that all goes wrong, but there's so much to uncover.
Right, right. I think you actually started with, and it sounds like it's part of your offering is, you know, um,
Mhm.
how do you personally adapt when plans you've built start falling apart? Right?
Yeah.
How do you manage that? What's your thought process on that? Because you touched upon it, and I'd love to expand on
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that if you assume everything will go right, and most people who start as engineers, they kind of have that happy path thinking, right? It's all going to go right. I have very different thinking. My thinking is, okay, make a plan and assume it's going to go wrong. So when it goes wrong, all right, take a step back, figure out why did it go wrong, what's not working, and then replan and try again and just keep repeating that. Now, in an ideal world, we've got fall through plans where, when we make our initial plan, say, okay, we know that's not going to work. So here's what we'll do. Here's our tactics that we're going to implement when things go wrong. And if that goes wrong, what are our tactics? And, it's one of those things, practice makes perfect, but when you first start at it, you try and have some fallback plan, and then when you implement the fallback plan, that's going to go wrong. And ultimately, when you're learning, You're just going to have to deal with the fallout. But as you get better, you're able to adapt and still meet whatever targets you needed because you built in both, not just, I don't want to say built in the time, because it's one of the things that people often get wrong. Like, oh, I just needed to build in more time. And there's the student paradox that steps in, which is, whatever the deadline is for the homework assignment to be turned in, it'll be late. Right.
Mhm.
So it doesn't matter how far in the future it is, it'll be late. So instead, we actually want to pull those things forward and meet the failure head on. And then when we meet the failure, we deal with it and then, focus on the next potential failure ahead of us. And we don't know what it is when we start. We have to examine it when it hits us. But being prepared for it means that we're less likely to freak out, right?
Right.
It's part of how we work.
That's interesting. Now, kind of pivoting to growth from a growth
Uh-huh.
perspective. Do you stay like how do you stay grounded with when growth feels chaotic? Do you have a similar concept to what you just shared?
Yeah, yeah. It's, when you're growing, the challenge becomes getting stretched too thin, right? Because you're trying to do everything all at once and you can't. So what you have to do is decide what's important, focus on that. And sometimes you have to accept that you can't do everything. I mean, there's going to be one of two outcomes. You're either going to try and do everything and you're going to spin out and the whole thing will fail. So your growth will plateau and then come crashing down. The other way to do it is say, okay, I can't do everything, and accept that some of those things are going to get dropped on the floor, but make sure that the ones that you don't drop are the important ones. And by doing that, you can maintain the trajectory and, if necessary, potentially even slow the trajectory just because of the things that you're not doing, but then, get it under control and keep moving. And, you know, there are only so many dials you can turn. You can add people, you can try and schedule things better, you can get more efficient, but each of those has their own cost, right? You add more people, well, now you're taking on the cost of training them and getting them up to speed.
Right.
So you have to recognize that and you have to balance those things to make sure that it's sustainable.
Absolutely. And it's all fascinating. I think you talked a lot about the adaption and the changes and when failures come to be prepared for that. Tell us a little bit about how you create a culture that invites the adaption instead of
Mhm.
resisting it.
Yeah. And the critical thing is to always focus on the, what do we call it? The BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goal.
Goal. Yeah.
And it's always got to be out there, right? Because even when you
Right.
achieve it, you need a new big, hairy, audacious goal that's even more audacious than the last one. And by by having that goal, you set the tone for what you expect of people. Because here's the thing: if you train people and you get them performing at a very high level of performance, they're going to recognize that they're performing well and you're going to congratulate them and
Mhm.
they're going to feel good. But then they're going to be like, all right, I've arrived. And if they've arrived, well, they stop trying. And one of the things that we, learn in Agile is this idea that if you're not getting better, you're getting worse.
Right.
Toyota really pushed this one, and it made its way into Lean. But
Yeah.
you often hear Kaizen, right? Constant improvement. And so we have to make sure that the goal is always out there, and then we have to make sure that the structure is in place for them to improve. And, the momentum process I talked about, it creates that feedback loop, and we need to make sure it's functioning, not
Right.
broken. Far too often the feedback loop is broken. We crush people by accident. A typical way is, okay, well, I've got people that are implementing. I will put them in a sprint, and I'll say these are the things that need to get done, and they'll be worried about them not getting done, so they will say take on multiple things to cover the ones that aren't getting done. So if you ever have a team where they have multiple things in progress per person, you have a problem, because a human being can only focus on one thing at a time. And it's just a natural reaction. They're trying to look good because they are good. Whereas if you set the expectation that, look, things are going to go wrong and that's okay, and we'll help you catch when things go wrong so that we can work together to fix them as a team, as a group, as an organization, well, then they can improve and you can drive that engine of improvement. And the end result is pretty fantastic, where the way that most companies, build teams, they get an initial win and that curve is logarithmic. So it spikes up early and then it trails off, and they keep adding more people thinking they're going to get more results, and they don't. But if you build that team that is all about getting better, it's an exponential curve. So down low, it feels wrong, but then you get that hockey stick, and it just takes off, and they become unstoppable.
That's wonderful. That's a great mindset to have around from a cultural perspective. I mean, being in leadership for such a long time, it's all the people and the culture that you build that gets you to where
Hmm.
you need to go. And it sounds like you really have that down. Thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that. Let's shift gears to AI, right?
Hmm.
Being that it's the center of most people's conversations today. I know we're all talking about AI assisted coding, but you take a different stance on that, right? Where do you
Yeah.
see AI fitting into the software development life cycle, and where does it fall short right now?
So I think one of the fundamental problems is we don't understand AI as a culture. We think it's intelligent.
Hmm.
AI is not well. Let me back up. So when we talk about AI, most people are talking about LLMs,
Hmm.
generative AI, large language models. And they think it's intelligent because it sounds intelligent. But what it's actually doing is it's echoing human thought that has been trained into its model. It's not any different than the machine learning we had before. It's just that we've packed so much data into it that for the very large models, especially, they've seen every situation that you can throw at them. So they combine the words in ways that make sense as a response. That makes them actually fantastic as interface tools, right? We can instruct them to do things. I use Lovable quite a bit, for example. Lovable's not ideal from a UX designer perspective. Ideally, I would like to hire a UX designer, but often projects can't support that. And if they can't support that, well, I can take the UX designers that built Lovable, they have built their knowledge into that model. And so we're getting a good starting point for a design. That is a very effective use of AI because the language model is the interface into a regular machine learning tool behind it that is reflecting what a human being has taken their knowledge and packed into a machine learning model. So that's fantastic. But we think that it's intelligent. So what we end up doing is we use tools like Cursor and we try and program with it. And Cursor looks great on the surface because anything that you've seen before, anything that's been done before, it knocks it right out, right? Because it's built into the model, it's in
Right.
its training set effectively. And it seems to be somewhat inventive because it takes a few things that are similar and jams them together. But then there's one problem. Businesses have unique value propositions. And the
Right.
moment you try to implement the unique value proposition of your business, it's not in the training set. So the AI doesn't know what to do. And if the AI doesn't know what to do, it starts making mistakes. And
Right.
some of my favorite are the ones where it like deletes the entire project and said,
Oh my
"Hey, I fixed the
gosh.
problem."
Oh my
Right?
gosh. Has that actually happened to you?
Not to me, but
Oh.
I
Did
I
anybody
don't
at your
use the AI for
organization?
coding, but
Not
but it has
technically.
happened to people.
Yeah.
If you look on social media, you see several examples. There was one guy who vibe coded a business, like he was one of the few very successful to vibe code a business, entirely got the AI to do it, had a few hundred customers, and the AI had deleted everything.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and it
That's
just
crazy
totally
because it
tanked
to
his
me,
business.
it's did we give an incorrect prompt somewhere? Because it's all about clear communication.
Again, the AI is not intelligent.
Right.
It's a echo of human thought. So the moment you find the wedge between the cracks where the human thought didn't flow previously,
Right.
now you've effectively created a random branch
Yeah.
somewhere into its logic. And so it does something crazy.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, that the LLMs will never ask you a question. They will have certain prompts that say that,
Right.
would you like me to do that for you? Right. But they will never ask a clarifying question. They will
Right.
never say, okay, did you mean this or that? Could you help me understand that?
Right.
Because they're not learning, they're not understanding. They are following a flow of what's built into the machine logic. If
Right.
you've ever talked with like a dementia patient
Mhm.
and they like, there are certain things they're like super clear at. My grandfather, he was a pastor. So when he'd meet and greet people, he'd seem just fine, right? Because that was stuff that was like so built into his his unconscious neural logic that flowed just fine. He'd go through the whole conversation. You never know anything was wrong. And
Right.
then you'd ask him why the heater was set to such and such, and he'd get angry. Who changed my heater? Right?
Right. Standard, yeah, standard scenario, yeah. Yeah, it's funny you say that because now, like immediately, being in the world of supporting people with AI is I need to immediately state in the beginning of every code, do not delete anything until you prompt me and ask me first. So good takeaway. Thank you for
Yeah.
that one. Let me ask you shared a little bit about some systems that you utilize today that help automation. Is there anywhere
Mhm.
else within your business that you're looking to automate? And is there anything that you absolutely would never, well, I wouldn't say anything that you wouldn't automate. That's clear that there is, but some things that other
Right.
people may automate, why wouldn't you choose to if that's the case?
Yeah. So automation is one of those things where anytime, well, as I always tell my engineers, right? If you have something that is repetitive, there's a tool that's very good at doing repetitive things. It's
Uh-huh,
called a computer. Let's
uh-huh,
use it.
uh-huh.
Right. And you'd be amazed how much that doesn't percolate into people's heads. If you've worked on large database projects, for example, you'll see where every customer for ingest has their own set of ETL packages. And it's like, why? Why isn't it just parameterized package that does the same thing approximately for everyone with slight variations? And that just doesn't click, right? But in reality, anytime you have repetition, you have an opportunity for automation. When you shouldn't automate is when you don't have repetition. If you haven't figured
Sure.
it out, if you don't know what you're doing, you often hear this, right? Like, we're going to add X. And in the past, X was, we're going to add a computer and it'll let us do all these things. Or today it's, we'll add AI and it will do all these things. And what are those things? Well, we don't know. We haven't done them yet. Well, if you haven't done them, how's the AI supposed to do them? You don't know how to do it. So if you don't know how to do it, you can't automate it. So anything that needs that human intelligence to step in and react and understand, you need to start there with non-automation. You need to do it first and get good at doing it. And when you're good at doing it, that's when the automation can step in. And, we live in an amazing time where we've got machine learning that can automate things that we didn't think could be automated before.
Right.
I remember talking with a CEO of a very large beverage distribution company, and he was like, well, I want to rank our customers and have a number. And he's like, I would give them this number and I'd give them that number. And it's like, well, you try and extract some rules and then you realize we should just use a machine learning model, have him, go through the process, and we'll get his intelligence right in there.
Right.
And we can do that. We have
Uh-huh.
these things, and you look at LLMs. Okay, now I can put a voice model or a text model on top of that, so I can just tell it what I want, and it'll spit out answers. But I then have to have a back end behind that. That it's just using natural language to communicate the back end system with me. So anytime you have repetition, automate it and use these amazing tools. But if you don't know how to do it yet, don't try to automate it. You're setting yourself up for a lot of cost and failure that's not worth it. And I guess the one other thing for my business specifically, right now, the convergence technology that we have, it's still code based, but a lot of it can be automated away. The reason why we can build software so much faster is that the 80 to 90% that's common, for example, um, the backend web services on applications we took the Spring Pet Clinic example and we converted to Convergence and we deleted all the Java code, none
Uh-huh.
left, because everything that Pet Clinic was doing was very simple, straightforward, repetitive. We've seen it a million times. So the convergence technology, it turned into a couple configuration files and we're done. Well, if we were able to pack all that logic in just a couple configuration files, we should be able to automate the creation of those configuration files. So that's where we're ultimately going with it, where we'll have a nice platform where you can, I don't want to say point and click your way to success because it starts sounding like a low code, no code platform.
Mhm.
And those are dangerous in their own right. We want to support skilled software engineers, but we want them to focus on the problems that matter to the software, to the business, to the outcome, and not on, okay, I paid people to write yet another web interface and it took them 6 months and, $300,000.
Mhm.
We don't need to do that. We can do it
Right.
much faster and cheaper.
Right. Right. That's great to share. Talking about scaling, right?
Mhm.
What's something that you feel doesn't scale, but or something, yeah, something that doesn't scale, but you still do it because it works for your organization. There's anything specifically that you feel you just can't get away from doing, even though there may
Yeah.
be other routes.
And that's tough because scaling comes on a lot of axes, and
Uh-huh.
we kind of have to look at different ones. But since we're on kind of the technology track, one thing that I think we need to rethink our scaling is the way that we deploy software. We've gotten in this idea of big clouds, microservices. Many of my customers have had, I had one large company I worked with that had a multi-million dollar a year um, AWS cloud bill, and it was like hundreds of thousands of dollars every month to run their servers. And
Uh-huh.
you look at it, and it's completely unnecessary. They could have run it on just a small handful of machines that cost a lot less. And computer hardware is getting so powerful. I literally run clusters on single board computers and they outperform the cloud. So we need to rethink how we're scaling software design, development, team sizes, right? Because this is all connected. If we go down, say, the microservice route, what we're committing to is a large number of teams, and those teams overly focused on a small portion of the system,
Uh-huh.
which makes sense if you're writing a lot of code to do things. Well, in my business, I'm saying, okay, you can have one team do what all those teams did and do it very effectively using this technology. And we can make them more effective over time by using these processes to encourage them, to incentivize them to get better and grow. And of course, we need them to be good software engineers to begin with. So ideally, we get that education part there so that we can build the next generation up and make sure that they're capable of those things.
Yeah. Speaking of the next generation, moving into that,
hmm
I mean, how do you protect your team from burnout, without,
hmm
slowing momentum in your organization?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because you say without slowing momentum, but burnout does slow momentum. If you continue to push people, eventually they get to a point where they just can't do it anymore and
Hmm.
the results drop. So if they're very high performance, a lot of companies think that's okay because they're still getting a lot of work, even though the individual's kind of checked out and is just doing the bare minimum, but they're just performing at such a high level that no one notices until that just keeps dropping down to nothing. So what we have to do is we have to realize that the machine has limitations. You can't
Hmm.
run any machine at 100%. What happens if you run a machine at 100% is it blows up. And people say, well, I'm paying these people to work. When you buy a car, did you buy the car to get the maximum out of your engine? I mean, you paid for that engine, right? Do you redline everywhere you go, just constantly running that, at 7,000 RPM right up to the red line? No, that's silly. That's
Yeah.
not why you bought the car. You bought the
Right.
car to get from point A to point B. And that's why we buy teams and why we buy software. We buy it to solve a business problem.
Right.
No founder or CEO woke up one morning and said, you know what? I'm going to found a business just to keep people busy.
Hmm.
That's what we got to do. And that's not effective, right? We have to constrain things. And, I'm a big proponent of people work 9 to 5, right?
Right.
Sometimes you have to push that out, but that needs to be extremely rare. And every time that happens, that's a failure. People work 9 to 5 and you focus on making them as effective as possible in that 9 to 5.
During those
If
hours.
you
Yeah.
can make them high performers in that 9 to 5, you won't need any more time,
Absolutely.
right? And it's interesting because that slack actually makes them better software engineers because what are they doing when they're not working in the office in that 9 to 5? They're thinking about all the things that, hey, maybe I could do this differently. Or they're doing a side project of, I'm really curious about this new technology that came out. How does that work? And they're learning something.
Right.
And so as you advance in that, you also have to build in things like, the hackathons and, culture building times. Culture building is an interesting thing. Some of the teams that I've had, you get these very multicultural teams, and
Hmm.
I remember one team I had. Yes, you had Indians, but I also had a Turkish person, I had a Russian, I had just every possible background. And how do you create cultural touchstones in a
Right.
team like that? And the answer is you say you have to impose a different culture. And I decided geek culture was going to be it. So,
Did you say
in
deculture?
between geek,
Geek culture. Okay.
Geek culture. Yeah.
That's great. Yep.
So yeah. So we do things like we'd have
Ping
a
pong
movie
movies.
ping pong, but there's a we'd have like geek movies that everyone would watch together and go for the highly quotable ones, right? So we watched Princess
Back
Bride
to the
together.
Princess Bride.
Princess
That's a
Bride.
geek
Yeah, I
movie?
know it doesn't seem like a geek movie, but after you do that, everyone's suddenly like, "Good luck storming the castle,"
Oh, that's so
right?
funny. But Princess
Because
Bride
that's
is
the
the
way
one where she
the geeks
she is
think.
kind of a school geek, right? And she meets the prince. That's that movie? Yeah. Okay. I'm sitting here thinking Back to the Future. What's the movie with the
Yeah,
little
Back to the
robot,
Future's good.
Johnny? What's his name?
Yeah, the Short Circuit,
Short
number
Circuit.
5, Johnny 5.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm thinking,
No, all good movies, but yeah, Princess Bride's really good because it's quotable, right? If you
okay,
can get a good quotable movie, then everyone will make the jokes during their development, and now you've got a cultural touchstone that
that's
they all
great.
kind of use together.
I love that. I mean, going back to what you said about having everybody focused really on a 9 to 5 schedule, giving them the opportunity to go spend those extra hours. I love that thought process that you have
Mhm.
because during those free hours that they have, their brain is in relax mode, but also in the mode to allows them to be innovative and imaginative and thinking. I'm thinking about my 2-year old here too,
Mhm.
right? So the less
Right,
stress that they have, the more opportunity they have to be imaginative and innovative and kind of come up
right.
with new ideas, which essentially you're doing yourself a favor by ensuring that they're on a 9 to 5 schedule. Is that what I'm hearing?
Exactly. Exactly, and in fact, what one outcome that people don't expect, managers especially don't expect, is they get so excited about the things that they're thinking about at night, they come in the next day ready to hit the ground. Like,
Right.
"Oh, I need to do that thing. Oh, I need to." Oh, and it's like you tell them you're not allowed to like log in and do stuff in the middle of the night. You need that's you time,
Yep.
right? So then the next day they're hitting the ground running because they want to do the thing,
They want to get the things done that they had
and
on their
it just
brain.
has
Yeah.
incredible effects.
Yeah, that's great. Now I do find that when I try to stick to a 9 to 5 schedule, I'm actually more productive than when I'm working a 60-hour week. So, I mean,
Hmm.
it's totally possible. So taking that content and bringing us pretty much full circle. I want to
Hmm.
understand, what unpopular leadership belief do you stand by?
I have a lot of them that are unpopular.
Give
One
us
of
your top
probably
2.
the biggest one is this idea that, and I'm not going to be nice about this one. This
No,
idea
go
that we
ahead.
need to gaslight our people. I remember one guy I was talking to. He says the job of management is when the ship is on its side in the grounded and it's rolled over, and it's a I think it was at the time of the cruise ship going aground that the captain left the boat, and it was all that crazy stuff. But
Mhm.
they're like, so the ship is on its side, and your job is to tell them that everything is fine. And I'm like, that's not your job. You're not supposed to say everything's fine. Just go. What you do is you say, okay, yes, the ship is
On
rolled
its side.
over on its side. You can see that. You're not stupid. You're uh, a bright human being, and I acknowledge that you're a bright human being. You can see this. I don't know why managers think that their employees aren't going to see when everything's going wrong. They're smart human beings. Okay, let's acknowledge it. Now that we've acknowledged it, your job as a leader is to give them a goal. It's like, okay, the ship's on its side. What is our job right now?
Right.
Right? Is it to try and get the ship upright? Is it to get people to safety? Is it to, what is our job? You give them a
Right.
job, they will do it, and they will feel accomplished for having done the thing that needs to get
Needs to be
done.
done.
Things
Right.
can go wrong. We often talk about build a culture of failure. Things will go wrong.
Right.
It's okay. And we need to not only accept that they'll go wrong, we need to lean into it, to embrace it. Ship's on its side. What's my job so I can go do it?
Right. I love that. And you just brought it back full circle again from the beginning of our conversation that started with, failure is inevitable. It's just a matter of
Hmm.
how we pick back up, dust it off, do what we need to do to get to whatever the success might be in whatever scenario we are in. So thank you for sharing that part of it. Let me ask, the name of the show is To Scale and Adapt, and,
Hmm.
failure and fixing failure is an adaptation. What are some of the biggest lessons you've learned about scaling a new idea in such a saturated and opinionated space?
Oh, that's a tough one. The I think I'm still learning in many ways, right? When kind of pre-COVID, the world was a different place and it was easy. Everyone had big problems and everyone wanted to solve the big problems. But the challenge we have now is everyone has big problems that they're trying to ignore. And the trying to ignore them just makes them bigger. And they're like, well, I'll just plug AI and that'll solve it. And it makes the problem bigger. So the biggest challenge right now is reorienting everyone's thinking to, hey, we can solve your problems. We can rethink the fundamentals. We know how to do this. You know, we've got 100 years of project management. We've got 80 years of computing history that we can pull from to make a difference, right? As a human species, we know so much. Don't just ignore it. Don't say, okay, latch on to the latest thing. Let's use all this knowledge as Invergence, we're all about collecting that knowledge and making it available to our customers. Let's use it and let's make a difference for your business. Let's not just survive, let's thrive. Let's
Absolutely.
really grow. And that's a hard message to hit the market with right now because everyone's kind of in a survival mode. And
Uh-huh.
that's a little frustrating. There are some
Yeah.
people that are thriving. There always will be some people that are thriving. There are people that want to thrive, and some of my best customers are ones that want to thrive. But there's also ones that are just scared by the current market and they don't know what to do. Is it all over? Is AI going to replace us all? And that's not healthy thinking.
No, I agree. I mean, I've been seeing a lot of recent news about how AI is actually going to help individuals even, make more money and start new
Hmm.
businesses and new jobs for individuals. Is
Yeah.
there anything that you'd like to say, as we're closing the loop here? Is there anything you'd like to say to those? Any words of encouragement to get them out of that slump and start
Yeah.
focusing on thriving?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the critical thing that everyone needs to understand is the world isn't different. What is hit is an Excel spreadsheet. It's just a more advanced Excel spreadsheet. We call it AI, but it's the exact same thing that happened when computing hit, when the Excel spreadsheet hit and the Microsoft Office hit. It replaced a lot of typists
Uh-huh.
and people that we called computers, but those people got better jobs.
Right.
Corporate America became more efficient. And we're in the exact same situation. And I know a lot of people, accuse me of whistling past the grave, but I have yet to see any situation where being competent, focusing on success, and really driving to make a difference doesn't succeed. AI is just a tool, and will, we can use our intelligence and our capabilities to succeed in the market more than ever before because we have these better tools now. So look at it as something to be excited about, not as something to be worried about.
Sounds amazing. Jerson, let me ask you, if a CTO listening wants to experiment with Convergent, what's the
Mhm.
best first step and what mindset shift should they bring into the process?
Yeah, I think the easiest thing to do is just to reach out to me, right? I'm happy to walk you through the process. It's a new platform, right, on the market, and
Mhm.
it's going to be hard to adapt. And I think there's a lot of opportunity. Just come in, send me an email, use the contact form, whatever, and contact me, and I'll help you understand how you can use it to succeed. You can also just follow the tutorials on convergence.com and get started. You can read the documentation. That's great, but it is a mindset shift. It's a fundamental mindset shift, and we'll
Uh-huh.
help you do it. If you want, we'll even get to professional trainings and other things. But it's more important to me that people just use the platform and that they use the knowledge that we have available. So let's just talk and we'll get you there.
Jerson, I mean, this has been fascinating. I mean, you're actually challenging assumptions many of us have taken granted for decades. Right? And
Hmm.
doing it in a way that puts developer experience and speed at the center of innovation. For listeners who want to learn more, visit invergence.com. Thank you for joining us on Scale and Adapt. This is where we highlight leaders redefining how work gets done in the age of intelligent automation. Jerison, thank you for your time and for sharing your vision.
Thank you very much.